Ever since BSG gave us the repair kit, it was always something that was of greater economic benefit than using the traders. The traders simply were more expensive than even just buying a repair kit. Even an armor repair kit, even if it was 500,000 rubles, still ended up being less expensive than going to someone like Prapor. Since the introduction of Point 13, we also had this chance to augment armor and weapons with added buffs. Seemingly insignificant, trivial type of buffs for weapons, things like accuracy or durability cost reduction, meaning that the gun lasted longer as you held down full auto. You know, we just got to fire it a little bit more, or malfunction chance reduction. But in the case of armor, armor is an interesting one because there is a buff that you can get on your armor that I think is broken, genuinely. In Escape from Tarkov, you have the ability to repair all kinds of different armor, and that corresponds to a skill. Light vests and heavy vests, depending on the armor type. Light vests are things like you see here, DRD, P.A.K.A.s, Karasas, 6B2, even the Tech is considered to be light armor, as is the Gazelle, where something like a Slick or a Fort armor, the Zabralo body armor, is considered to be heavy. Every time that you repair a piece of armor, you slightly raise the skill. So in this case, we can see that I'm at 37.6 out of 40, and if we repair this, it should go up to 39.7 out of 40. The amount of skill pertains to how much of an item you're repairing. So the more gauge that is here, the more repair points that you use to repair the armor that you're repairing, the more XP you will get. Hey, we got level 4. In order to be able to gain enhancements on the gear that you have, whether it is weapons or armor, you have to have at least level 10 skill. When you get level 10, you go to repair something and it comes up with this little green stripe that says repairing can add an enhancement. At level 10, it's somewhere around, I would estimate 10% as I've been grinding through the weapon repair ability, and every once in a while you will get a buff. This one unfortunately didn't take. Lucky for us, we already have community members that have been grinding this right along, like this Gazelle body armor for instance. Notice the buff here says reduces incoming damage rare 20%. That is what I want to talk about. Oh, and a quick special thank you to NLV Guy, who's the person that ended up posting this image on Twitter. Props, dude. Good grind. Now, for those of you interested in why this is as broken as it is, I want to explain some math. Unfortunately, we got to go to the numbers for this because Tarkov is basically all about percentages and likelihoods and ballistic coefficients and all kinds of other fun stuff. And as we know, damage and penetration versus armor is just one big statistical numbers game. I'm going to try to explain this in as simple of an amount of detail as I possibly can so that I don't lose any of you all. But just understand, for those of you that are going to be more detail-oriented and detail-minded, this is a very general and broad overview. We're not talking about decimal points here. I'm really just trying to stick to generalities. The point is that hopefully you guys will get the point. For the purpose of this illustration, I'm using this bad boy right here, the 366 TKM APM round. This is for a couple of different reasons. For example, Jaeger offers a task, the Tarkov Shooter Part 3, that says to eliminate PMC operatives from less than 25 meters away while using a bolt-action rifle. Very commonly, a lot of players tend to go the 215 route for this. They end up loading up a 215 with some APM rounds, take a couple of bullets extra with them, and they go to factory and try and see if they can get some PMC kills. Traditionally, this had been done using different types of ammunition. 54R is usually the go-to, or was back then, because things like 54R PS and BT had enough damage to be able to one-tap someone's thorax. However, that is not the case anymore, and 54R no longer gets used for this task. The go-to is usually using a 215 with either this ammo or something like EKO, which is capable of not only one-tapping a head or face, but also capable of one-tapping a chest piece. And that is really the key here. See, because APM has 90 damage and 42 penetration. That means that not only will it one-tap a chest because of its high flesh damage, but it will also one-tap a chest through class 4 armor, which right now the High-Com Trooper and stuff in that category tend to be the go-to for an awful lot of people because it's lightweight and it's easily obtained. You can buy it right off of the flea market in the case of the Trooper. And the added benefit of the Trooper being repairable doesn't hurt. But what if we run that ammo up against this Gazelle with its buff? Or hell, any other piece of armor for that matter. And how does that exactly work? To make sure that we get everybody on the same page, I want to talk about penetration as it pertains to armor durability. Those two stats are completely intertwined. Here we have a simulation from Tarkov-changes.com where they have a pretty nice ballistics calculator and also a shots to kill calculator. So here we have our APM and we have a calculated chance to penetrate. In this case, something like APM going up against a class 5 Gazelle K is only going to have a 12.3% chance to pen on the first round. But then you can see as the durability decreases, the amount of chance to penetrate obviously goes up as the durability goes down. Something like our 6B2, which we can see right here in our inventory, it's only a class 2, has a 98.2% chance to pen. That's the highest penetration chance that you'll get out of any piece of armor. The same can be true for the P.A.C.A. The High-Com Trooper comes in just behind it at 91.2% because 42% chance to pen is above a tier 4. But let's say we have our Gazelle, and the chance to pen being 42 goes up against the class 5 and falls short. How much damage is done to the armor when the class 5 is hit by that? In order to calculate that, we need to look at the ammo table. 366 APM has 42 penetration and 60 armor damage. The 60 in armor damage is a percent. What that means is 60% of this 42 penetration is the amount of durability damage that will be done to the Gazelle when it's struck, or 25.2 durability. If we go back to our Gazelle and we remove 25.2 from 65, that gives us 39.8 durability remaining. If we remove 39.8 or 39.8, you can now see that we have a 42.1% chance to penetrate. If we hit it a second time, it would go down to then 14.6, which would give us a 96.4% chance to penetrate. 3 shots and someone's done. Although second shot is at 50-50, and those are probably not odds that I would like either. But what happens if our armor has this 20% buff on it? I'm glad you asked. See, that reduces incoming damage amount is a physical damage amount, meaning that the amount of damage that is actually applied to your chest and or stomach, depending on what is covered by the armor, is actually reduced by that flat percentage. So in the case of a 90 damage projectile being 366 APM, if all of that damage were realized to the chest and the armor that you were wearing had that 20% damage reduction buff to it, that means that you're going to take 72 damage instead of 90. 20% of 90 is 18, meaning 72. 18 damage of the 90 is scrubbed off by the buff. So what at one time had been a 1 shot to the chest is now a 2 shot, no matter what way you shake it. In fact, that means that even if you had something like a 6B2 on, or a P.A.C.A. or any other piece of garbage armor which happened to be enhanced by that specific buff, the first shot from any APM round would not kill you. It would take 2 hits, no matter what. Unless, of course, you had already been damaged and the first 3 points of your chest were already missing, and then they could get you. But assuming that a chest was full life, they could not kill you, not even at point blank range. Unless, of course, it fragmented. But let's assume that we're going to play the odds. What is nuttier is that that same logic could be applied to helmets. Remember that video that I did a while back where we tested the ballistic damage fall off when we had the 12-12 patch, and I said there's something wrong with the damage and penetration fall off at over 100 meters? Because I realized that in order to one-tap somebody through a U-lock, there was only about 5 rounds in the entire game that would be capable of doing that. Then they reworked the ballistic system and told us, oh yeah, we fixed that. So now there's maybe a dozen rounds or so that could do that through a U-lock. Imagine if that U-lock now had a 20% damage reduction buff applied to the helmet. Who's getting a one-tap at 100 meters with a 20% damage reduction? What if somebody ends up getting the buff on a face shield repair? Because you could have a barely scuffed piece of gear and still end up giving it a repair attempt, like this 545 short that's at 98 out of 100 durability that I built a little while ago and just kind of took out for a single raid. You know, you could still get a buff on that even if you're only fixing like 1 durability point. And that's the beauty of the system. You don't need hardly any repairing in order to be able to actually try and roll for a buff. So what if you get a barely scuffed face shield and just end up having the ability to repair that, and you get a 20% damage reduction buff to that? Or hell, a set of Condor glasses. Then what? Or you have a Killa helmet that you end up augmenting a little bit, and now you've got a 6+ face shield. The list goes on and on. Now couple that with something like a Meldonin. How's your chest looking then? 30% damage reduction to body? Yeah, that sounds like something I could go for. The larger issue here is that this is going to compound the problem with time to kill. Not that we necessarily have one right now, and I don't necessarily mind that they made us a little bit spongier by getting rid of all the high pen ammo, and we have to either find it or craft it if we want to use it now. That part doesn't really bother me. The part about this that tends to irk me just a little bit is that even something like a stab vest, if augmented in this way, is going to be able to stop an APM round to the effect of it one-tapping you. You would be left with 3 HP on your chest, but it would still end up needing that second hit. Not to mention all the work it took, having to set up the creep farm and then, harvest all those pieces of paper and make all those books to set up the enchanting table and the library and all that other stuff. You know what I mean? Minecraft reference. Now, the durability of the armor does absolutely matter because it's basically based on a factor of whatever the repaired durability is in terms of how long the buff lasts. But here's how wild and wacky this gets. In the case of something like a 6B2, it has a full durability of 80 points. If you were to enhance this with a 20% damage reduction buff, we would then have to go to the calculator and look at what happens to this as it gets hit. So a 6B2, when it gets hit, it would lose 25.2 points of durability, taking it down to 54.8. Now notice the chance to pen isn't going up anymore, but that's not really the point. When it takes the second hit, it would go down to 29.6. And this is why durability matters. Because the way that these calculations work, it's based on a numerical value that is lost, not a percentage of the armor value. It's a flat amount of armor durability. And the way that the buff duration sticks around is actually based on a percentage of loss of the armor. Basically, it's calculated like this. Let's say you have a almost fully repaired 79.96B2 body armor. From there, you end up taking a single round of APM, which reduces it by 25.2. So that would take you to 54.7. Now, this is an important distinction because at this point, the buff that you have on your armor would not fall off, and it would enable you to take another 20% reduced hit on the chest before you would lose the buff. And the reason for that is because while the amount of durability loss is a flat number based on the relationship between damage and penetration of the round, it's a flat amount of durability lost based on the damage that it takes. The buff is entirely based around percentages of value lost of whatever repaired value there is on the armor at the time. So instead of it being this 25.2, reducing it to 54.7, it's not based on how much durability is lost numerically. It's based on a percentage of the whole, specifically a third. So if we take 79.9 and we multiply it by 0.66, this is what the durability would have to be below before it fell off. So if you take a hit, instead of going and repairing it and potentially losing that 20% buff, this means that you could take the armor back in again and still take the 20% damage reduction. Now, the next time that you repair the armor, it would re-roll whether or not you're going to get that enhancement. But even still, not re-rolling the enhancement and getting the 20% damage reduction is going to far outweigh re-rolling it if you still have that buff on there. You would just keep it. It's like running double Meldonin for free on your chest and or stomach, depending on what it is that you're wearing. To me, this feels a little bit overpowered. It's one of those that I feel like BSG is going to have to nerf. Now, granted, you could end up headshotting somebody. That's possible. But unless you have an augmented helmet, in which case maybe you're not going to be headshotting anybody because a tier 4 helmet would be treated the same way as this. Imagine an Alton or a Wrist T or a Kill a Face Shield. The possibilities are endless, my friends. Maybe I'm reading into this too much. Maybe I'm overlooking it. Maybe you guys like this. I don't know. But to me, this feels like it's a little bit overtuned. I'm not sure if this makes a whole lot of sense in my case, especially if we're talking about shooting people at range, because they're just going to tank 2 and 3 and 4 shots before you end up downing them. In some cases, this would be 3 headshots, depending on what it is that you're using and from what range you're firing it from. And I don't know about y'all, but a 993 round getting eaten by a helmet just because it's got a 20% damage reduction and it doesn't transfer enough damage to somebody's head, that would be annoying. Of course, there's the prevalence of whether or not this buff ends up sticking and how often it occurs and what is rare exactly, because I'm not exactly sure what the percentages of those are, but I can tell you what the calculations are, at least on the receiving end. All of that is accurate. Anyway, guys, that's what I have for this one. Thanks so much for coming by. If you haven't noticed, we've started uploading an awful lot of YouTube shorts now, so go and check them out if you would be so kind. We're really trying to get hard into the shorts game, try and do a little bit of cross promotion. There's a lot of stuff going on over at Onepeg on TikTok as well, where we're kind of cross-platform uploading those things at the same time, so depending on which one you prefer to stick around on, there's always those to go and view. I would really appreciate follows and likes and all that kind of stuff on there. As always, if you would be so kind as to sub the channel here, I would be forever appreciative, and please come check me out at twitch.tv/onepeg. We do this kind of stuff all the time, so come and hang out if you would be so kind. I would love to see you there. Thank you for lending me your eyeballs, and I will see you in the next one. Peace, my friends.